this, now I'd like to pass it on to Carolyn to officially conclude the conference and do the thank yous and end the conference for today. Carolyn.
Great, thank you, Barsha. And thanks to everybody who helped bring this conference to a virtual platform after a very successful conference in 2019. I want to first thank our panelists and speakers for offering your insight and inspiration to this group of women and men who are working in data and technology. Also, a big thank you to all the participants who provided their time on a weekend to show their dedication to this sector, to women in data. And thank you to our Women in Data Steering Committee for organizing this conference despite all of the challenges and, of course, the desire to have something in person when we can't do that this year, but hopefully next year. I also want to note that the Women in Data Steering Committee is expanding their role to go beyond just the annual conference, and I look forward to working with them, as Craig mentioned, for the next 3 years. And so I think there will be in-person events soon, led by the Women in Data Steering Committee. At the risk of maybe kind of citing some of the same examples that Craig just cited, I'll go ahead and wrap up with some of the key highlights, I think, from this conference. We covered a number of topics related to women in data, and I'm personally walking away from this conference, or shutting my computer, more informed and more inspired by everybody who spoke today. I think some of the common themes that I pulled out and connected with were, around the power of data and how being involved in data is only one way that we can empower women and empower ourselves. The value of education and how that's kind of the first step to empowering girls and women from middle school through higher degrees, but then we also heard examples of even younger children playing games and using online learning that make data and math more accessible from a young age. We also heard quite a bit around how much women need to support each other as role models, as mentors, and as senior leaders who create space for more women to work in the sector. Also, women who can take advantage, who are in those senior level positions, take advantage of opportunities to set policies and to use data and their unique perspective to fill gaps in policies that impact women. Another thing that we heard a number of times is sort of this fear of data and this fear that women have in kind of engaging and following a career in data. So how do we reduce that fear? How do we make it less complicated and more accessible to women who might sort of reject it so that they can pursue these careers? And finally, we've heard quite a bit about the value of diverse voices in data. And this started from Meg's opening remarks, where she mentioned the value of diversity of voices and turning data into information and into knowledge. If girls see more of themselves represented in data, will they also fall in love with it, like they fall in love with reading? Lisa also reminded us how important women's voices are in our current context, in light of the COVID pandemic in particular. She reminded us that not only are women impacted more than men by COVID, but the existing data that the government relies on is insufficient, and that we need more skilled women supporting senior level women to make better use of data and policy decisions. Along those lines, Sajna highlighted that some major achievements for women have been enshrined in the Constitution with the quotas of at least 33% representation, but there's still a long way to go when it comes to leadership and when it comes to accessing power. And so we look forward to our work with D4D and with our partners to build women leaders in data through the steering committee and through activities that bring women into data and technology programming. We also heard from Tina, and she related data back to her experience in big companies and noted the power in data to drive efficient processes, make decisions, reduce costs, and adhere to and support government regulations. And that women can support organizations with problem solving, creativity, multitasking, in addition to the technical skills that they bring in analysis, coding, and training. And I also appreciated her comment about creating a position if you don't see one for you. And I think that's something that we can all consider how we take that forward in our careers. And then we had a first panel that featured Sumana Shrestha, Jamie Holton, and Jyoti Devkota. They all came from a variety of sectors, and they covered quite a bit, but I think what I pulled out the most were a few different themes. One was on this idea of demystifying data and math and looking more at the logic of why we use data, and to start with math, to sensitize women to data quality, also to look at how we include a diverse set of girls who might join math from different walks of life, and how we create space for that. We also talked about the culture surrounding data use, and how can data be used to resolve issues that are stuck? How can policies be used to create space for women? And how can policies be the beginning of a conversation on data? And how can we use them to make it more practical? We also talked about broadening what it means to work in data, and to work to support data. So I think Craig also mentioned this, that you don't have to have a technical background to work in data, but you can come from different sectors and just support the use of data. And then, of course, we had a long discussion on mentors and role models, and how we should all be looking for a variety of different mentors. And this can be within and outside of Nepal. And let's not forget that technology can support opportunities to find mentors from around the world. We heard a lovely presentation from women in STEM, and they provided an overview of what STEM is. And I think what stuck with me were those values of exploration, teamwork, and inclusion that come with STEM, and that these are not commonly applied to girls, and yet they're very empowering and important life skills for all women. So this just again highlights the importance of STEM for girls as well as boys. And then finally, we rounded out with a second panel discussion featuring Bonnie Pradhan, Rumi Singh, and Princy Koirala. I think from this one, what I took away were the value of data in processes and solving problems and providing solutions. So that data are used, we heard from all the panelists that they use data as part of optimizing business processes. They're a useful solution that contextualize the business process of what you're looking at, or they provide solutions when contextualized in a business process. So we heard examples from health, from transportation, from business management, to show us how data can be introduced into processes to solve problems. One point that Princey brought up was how you can start with what data do we need? What are those key performance indicators that we want to measure? How do we fill that gap? And then how do we analyze it? I think we often start with data as a solution without saying, but what is this actually a solution for? So it was nice to hear how that thought process of kind of the step-by-step, how we integrate data into these processes is important. We also heard that having digital data alone doesn't always respond to the needs. Again, it needs to be built into a process. You need to have the right people who can take that digital data and turn it into something. And I think Bonnie also reminded us that data is simply numbers. You have to contextualize that to turn it into information. And then with analysis, you get knowledge. And as Craig mentioned, we also heard a discussion on data privacy. And I think what was interesting from that was this combination of kind of the tech solutions for data privacy, but the ethics that are founded in humanitarian kind of schools of thought. And that Princey also mentioned how valuable it is to have a social science combination with your technical skills to look at data privacy. And Bonnie also reminded us that let's not be afraid of data and technology. It's not that complicated, it's doable. Start kids young, consider games to bring kids into technology, And also, how do we work with men and boys and ensure that they are equally involved in making an enabling environment for women to pursue careers in data and technology. And then Craig, I'm wrapping up Craig, who wrapped up this entire conference, but he reminded us that it's important to not only come from different sectors and work in data, but to apply data to different sectors. And I think that's a good takeaway for all of us. And then I'll just end on a point that Bonnie mentioned, which is that data-driven policies can really make a difference. And that is something that is at the heart of what the Data for Development program is doing. We really believe that policies that are data-driven can be more effective, they can reach more people and better meet the needs of Nepali people. And yes, as Craig mentioned, we're doing this with a female-led team, and so we're happy to continue building female leaders in the sector. And we look forward to continued engagement with the Women in Data Steering Committee and to integrate programming that encourages women's participation and leadership in data and technology.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn. So that was Carolyn. She's our director for the Asia Foundation and G40 program. I think I forgot to mention that before. So with this, I'd like to thank all the participants for this year's event, and a special thank you to everyone who is here with us until the end of the conference today. And we look forward to come back with longer, robust, and probably an in-person conference next year. And please feel free to provide any feedbacks that you have or any shared topics that you would like to look into in the next year's conference. So thank you, everyone. Namaste, and have a good evening.